Welcome back, guys, to the All Love, All Hate Fantasy Football Podcast. We are in the championship week, last week of the fantasy football season, and episode 14 for our podcast. We're glad to have y'all back in, watching and listening to what we have to say. And we're going to get straight into weekly words for our championship week. All right, so a lot happening around the league this week. One thing is huge now because COVID has been so terrible over the past couple of months with fantasy-wise and normal NFL. The NFL has changed their COVID mandates to align with the CDC, and I believe it's 5 days of quarantine for vaccinated players now. So that could help out some teams this week. Just be on the lookout. On that note, Carson Wentz is on the COVID list. He may be out Sunday. He does have a chance to play with the new guidelines, so we'll have to wait and see. But one thing to watch is how Jonathan Taylor plays without his starter. I believe earlier this season, Carson Wentz missed a couple games and had to play with backups and stuff like that. And Jonathan Taylor is obviously a huge workload guy, just like Derrick Henry was, and gets over 20 carries a game. I don't think that'll change. I think it may even get a little bit higher. But what do you guys think? How does that affect Jonathan Taylor? And I believe he may get a little bit of help back on the offensive line this week too.
I mean, honestly, I think that it'll probably give Jonathan Taylor like a few more carries than usual because they don't have their starter to be able to throw to like Michael Pittman Jr. and some of the other receivers. Then they may have to pick up the slack with Jonathan Taylor. I mean, that would make sense, but I guess we really don't know because we haven't really seen it before. So,
yeah, I'll have to agree. I mean, Taylor is obviously a workhorse. He's the best running back in football right now. Even if Wentz does play, because there is a chance he does play with the new guidelines in place, I don't think Taylor's value would change even if he's active, just because we know they're going to use Taylor a lot in the game. I mean, this is a key week for Taylor for a lot of fantasy owners because I guarantee a decent amount of fantasy owners who are in the championship have Jonathan Taylor, including our own Jacob Reeder. So I don't think it will change too much regardless if he's active or not, but it is something to watch out for because you never know. With Sam Etlinger as the potential starting quarterback, who knows how that system's going to go, especially with the Colts in the hunt for the playoffs.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch, and I think if Carson Wentz doesn't play, Nyheim Hines will get a lot of work also, especially with easy passes out of the backfield to help out those new and backup quarterbacks. Another guy that people were hoping was going to be back and we're going to rely on if they still made it this far is Darren Waller. He unfortunately just got put on IR, so he will be out most likely for the season, but definitely for our fantasy season. So hopefully anybody can go to the waiver wire and pick up guys like Gerald Everett and guys like that who have been playing pretty well these past few weeks and try to win their championships or win a little bit of money if they can't. Peyton, what you got?
yeah, so along with Carson Wentz being on COVID, there's another guy that's on COVID, on the COVID IR, and that is Mike Williams. And he may be able to play on Sunday, but again, with these guidelines, you kind of just don't know because you don't know if these guys are still testing positive. You don't know if they have any symptoms. You don't know really how they feel, and it's difficult to try and gauge whether or not guys are gonna be back and be able, even if they don't have COVID anymore, or even healthy enough to be able to go out there and give you a good game. But he may be back. Also, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we saw him get hurt and leave the game early last week. As of right now, he is week to week, so he's probably not going to play this week. He's not going to be any help to fantasy managers for the rest of the season, sadly. But someone who may be back is DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift has been out for the last 4 weeks, I believe, and he's been practicing, so it looks like we'll see a return for DeAndre Swift this week. And, I mean, that'll definitely help out some people because I know when he first went on IR, I'm sure people went out and looked for other backs and stuff. So now to get either their primary starter back or to be able to get an extra starter back, it should definitely be able to help people out in this championship week. Chris, what you got?
Yeah, on the same train as running backs, another running back just got put on IR. Rams, basically the starting running back throughout the season, Darrell Henderson Jr., he's been having injury issues the past couple of weeks, and he was now officially put on IR. So now there's a bit of a question going on in the Rams backfield. We saw last week, in the past couple of weeks, I guess you could say, Sony Michel has filled in pretty well when Henderson was gone. I mean, Michel is basically revitalizing his career in a very important year since he's been traded to the Rams earlier this season by New England, especially after Cam Akers came down with injury. And on that note, though, Cam Akers may be back sooner rather than later. He tore his Achilles over the summer, but he was actually activated off of IR not long ago. So who knows if Akers is going to be a key asset for the Rams moving forward. I mean, in my opinion, I think they should save him for the regular season, like the NFL playoffs, not fancy playoffs, because this is a guy who could easily help keep that offense like as strong as it's been all offseason. But easily the biggest thing to watch for is how Michel and Akers are going to be used moving forward. And before we go to our next segment, though, I do want to pay my respects to someone who is a legend in both football and in broadcasting. The great John Madden passed away yesterday. As a football fan all of my life, John Madden's been one of the biggest figures in the sport. He basically changed the landscape of the NFL. And he also is the namesake for one of my favorite video games of all time, which is EA's Madden NFL. So I just want to state from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank John Madden for all he's done for the game, and that our thoughts and prayers and our condolences are with his family at this time. And that will conclude this week's Weekly Words, and we'll hop right into our next segment, which is Girl Talk. All right, so before we get to the championship game of our Dynasty League, we're going to give a quick recap of what happened this past week between the two semifinal matches. That would, of course, would be Jacob versus Sean and Peyton versus Ashton. To start, I'm going to talk about Jacob and Sean, and I'm going to put that matchup on screen right now. This was going to be probably the most exciting matchup since these two teams were very similar to one another. Both were big surprises going into the season because, believe it or not, they were both in the bottom two places last season. So one of these guys was going to go from bottom of the barrel to the championship in less than a year, in basically a year's time. So kudos to both of them on that. But in this game, it really came down to Jacob's running backs. They carried the brunt of the weight the entire game. Jonathan Taylor, surprisingly, had the worst performance of the group. I mean, Javonte Williams scored less than them, but we expected Jonathan Taylor to go off completely. But in this game, he only scored 10 points. So who came in to save the day? That would be none other than the Bengals running back, Joe Mixon. He had a huge game, 28.5 points. Very, very important matchup for him right there. I mean, the Bengals offense just exploded that entire day. And on that note, Sean left somebody on his bench, which if he had started, might have given him the win in the game. He had put Tom Brady as a starting quarterback, the guy he had used the entire season, who didn't really have that good of a game against Carolina, which was a game many people thought he would have a good game against. And on his bench was none other than Joe Burrow, who had a career game last week, 525 yards and 4 touchdowns, nearly 40 points in fantasy. And that kind of decided the game. Sean's team did overall pretty well. Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp had good games. Jamar Chase had a good game. But Rob Gronkowski only put up 3 points. Russell Gage only put up 4. And Jacob's team was able to put up 121 points behind strong performances alongside the running backs, Deebo Samuel, Justin Herbert. And at the end of the day, the final score was 121-89. Jacob, the man who finished in 11th last season, now finds himself in the championship vying for first place. But to do that, he's going to have to take down the man who won last week, our reigning champ, Mr. Peyton Hedrick. He played Ashton last week, as I said, and I'll pull up the score and put it on screen right now. This game, most people had as a lopsided event. Everyone kind of thought Peyton was going to win this thing easily. Ashton's team is nowhere near as bad as people nowhere near as people had it as. His team's good, all things considered, but he was just dealing with a lot of injury troubles over the past week. And hold on, my screen is frozen real quick. Hold on. Sorry about that. And everyone kind of had Peyton winning by a decent score. Well, the score ended up being a lot closer than we expected. It was mainly due to both teams having rough performances all around the board. Peyton was dealing with some injury problems. Travis Kelce was out on the COVID list, and he had to start Evan Ingram in his place, who had a pretty bad game until he found a garbage time touchdown near the end. He had Clyde, who had a good start to the game, but he also got injured halfway through the game, as we spoke about during our last segment. So coming in to save the day for Peyton was Josh Allen, I would say is the MVP of his team. He had a 30-point game, and it was important because Alvin Kamara only put up 7 points. Saints offense against Miami could not get anything done. Tyreek Hill only had 3 points. People were kind of worried that his health wouldn't be at 100%, and it kind of showed in this game. CeeDee Lamb had a good game, all things considered, but Cowboys offense was just on fire the entire night. The only issue was CeeDee Lamb was not really a big factor in it. And Van Jefferson had easily his worst game up to the season, 1 catch for 6 yards. But Ashton's team, thankfully, for Peyton's benefit, did not do too good. Mahomes had a good game. Same with Hunter Renfrow and Michael Pittman Jr. DK Metcalf had a good game, even though he only had 2 catches. He did have 1 touchdown, which kind of gave pretty much all the points of the night for him. But Tony Pollard and Darrell Henderson Jr., who he had to start because he lost Derrick Henry and Chris Carson weeks ago for the season, they had a pretty bad game. Adam Thielen got injured midway through the game, and although he came back, he wasn't really much of a force. And Tyler Higbee basically put up as much points as you would expect from Tyler Higbee. The final score is 82-77. Peyton barely made it in, and now he will have the chance to defend his title against, like we said, Jacob. So 2 hosts of the All Love, All Hate Fantasy Football podcast find themselves in the championship. I don't think we could have written that any better. I mean, you guys agree with that? So to hop into our next part of the segment, I want Jacob and Peyton to each discuss what they think will be their keys to winning this week, as well as maybe their one thing they're worried about for this matchup. Who wants to start first?
Reigning champ can have the honors.
All right. Sorry, my mute button wasn't working for some reason. I couldn't get off mute. Yeah, so it's definitely awesome going back to the championship. 2 years in a row. It's pretty cool. And in my other league, I was in 3 leagues this year, and I made it to the championship in 1 other league too. So playing for 2 titles this week, both in money leagues. So hopefully I end the weekend with a little bit of cash, maybe. I don't know. But basically what it's going to come down to for my team is, I'm going to need a good game from Kamara. I'm going to need a good game from Swift coming off of injury. And there's guys that I should expect to have good games, like Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Travis Kelce. They should have good games. Josh Allen should have a good game. All my matchups are pretty good, but I think the key to success for me is just running backs basically showing up and having a good game. My flex spots are not ideal. Not really who I want to be starting for the championship, but, Clyde's hurt. Mike Williams is out, so I'm really kind of forced to do it. So, but basically, not really trying to accept defeat, really, but I think as long as Jacob has a decent day, he should be able to pull off the win this week. But anything can happen, and we'll see what happens. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited, obviously, from going from last place last year to playing in the championship against the reigning champ is always a great thing to see. And you love how the team just kind of grew as the season went on, got rid of some other guys, and just kind of blossomed into a pretty solid team with some stars that just kind of popped off this year. Obviously, I'm supposedly the RBU. I don't know. We'll have to see after this game. Might lay that into cement, but we'll have to see. But yeah, obviously my running backs is what I really need to kind of play well. I mean, that's the heart and soul of my team. Mixon, Taylor, Gibson, and J Dub. I mean, as long as they play well, I play well, and we'll have to hopefully see that. Jonathan Taylor, need him to have a great game as usual. MVP, in my opinion, of the entire season, and obviously of my team. So if he plays well, my running backs back him up well, and Debo can beat up on the Texans. I think I'll be in a good position. Herbert had a bad game this week, ended up okay for fantasy, but hoping that they get back on track, and maybe even it'll be a shootout and help me out a little bit. Obviously, Peyton's been dealing with some injury, but he's still one of the strongest teams in the league. I'm still worried about his guys who could just go off for 40 points at a random. So it's not a win already for me, but I'm definitely looking on the up and up, and hope that maybe I'll have a little more cash in my pocket at the end of the week. Langley, what do you have to say?
I mean, I'm going to get to you guys matchup in the Bourbon Bowl, which will be our last segment this week. We're going to actually do our segments a little out of order. But yeah, I mean, just coming from a spectator in this game, I think this game is really going to be close. I mean, I'm going to discuss this more in the Bourbon Bowl, but like just to say off the top, Jacob has the most consistent team, but Peyton has the best boom team. Like Peyton could easily boom for 150 points. We know what his team is capable of. I mean, last year in the championship, the man scored 174 points, I believe. I mean, granted, he got like 60 points from Alvin Kamara having the 6 touchdown game, but still, it's the fantasy championship. That is a huge, huge week, and his players showed up when it mattered the most. He won that game, I want to say, by about 75 points. It's a pretty large margin, especially for that game.
Looking forward to it. Earlier this season, we had one of the most exciting games, probably the highest scoring. I think it was 160, 142. So, I mean, we'll see. Anything can happen.
It's gonna be exciting. I'm very, very, very curious to see how this goes down. But I mean, unless you guys have anything y'all want to add about y'all's teams, y'all good? All right, well, perfect. So for this episode, we're gonna head to hot takes, and then we'll close out the episode with Bourbon Bowl. But let's head straight to hot takes, where we're going to give our final hot takes of the season. See y'all in a moment.
That's a spicy meatball.
All right, I'll start off hot takes this week. I am coming off a win. I am now 4-9 on the season, and I'm actually now leading between the three of us in hot takes. I started off 0-7, and now I'm the top person. Take it and run, I guess, especially because I'm not even in the championship this year. Didn't even come close to the championship. I was playing in the toilet bowl last week, which I also won. So 2 dubs on the week. I'll take it. So my hot take this week, I picked up a dude on the waiver wire a few weeks ago, and so far he's played really, really well. He might be my best waiver pick this entire season, and I'm going to stick with it going into this week. I have Rashad Penny rushes for over 120 yards and scores a touchdown. It's very likely he does it. He's done it 2 of the last 3 games. Here's hoping he does it to make it 3 or 4. What do y'all got?
All right, going to mine. Obviously, this year, the 49ers have scored a lot of rushing touchdowns from all their many running backs to even Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo punching it in, and their wide receivers that play a lot of running back. So this week, I think the 49ers will score 3 or more rushing touchdowns against the Texans. Debo Samuel, Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson, and maybe even some Trey Lance, because he should be starting this week if Jimmy Garoppolo is out. I believe he hasn't practiced this week, so we'll have to watch and see that. But in my opinion, with a pretty bad Texans defense, even though they played well this past week, I think the 49ers can score 3 or more rushing touchdowns. Peyton, close us out.
Yeah, so my hot take this week is going to be that DeAndre Swift, coming off of an injury, comes back, plays pretty well, and ends up in the top 15 for half-point PPR for running backs this week. I'm just hoping for a big game from him, mainly because it's championship and I have to start him. But I think he'll get it done this week.
All right, perfect. And with that, we'll head to our final segment of the episode, which is Bourbon Bowl.
Getting to our Bourbon Bowl, the last segment of this final week of the fantasy football season. We're going to talk about our third place game between Sean and Ashton. Langley will put the game up on the screen right now. It should be an interesting game. I think one team obviously is more healthy and is in a better place than the other. I'll take Sean winning this game. He'll win the $15 prize, which is the money to enter the league. So he just gets his money back, played for free this season, had some fun, and didn't have to lose any money. And he'll come back next season with a full juice ready to go. And hopefully his team can play just a tad bit better than it did this season. Peyton, what do you have for that game?
Yeah, I agree. I think Sean's going to win. I think he's going to win pretty easily too. Assuming, he actually has some running backs to play, but still, Ashton really doesn't have anything to work with. He's struggled with injury this year, and so I think Sean wins this one.
Normally, I take the safe pick when it comes to Bourbon Bowl. I've done it all year, but I think for this episode, I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm actually going to go with Ashton because we've seen Ashton pull off the impossible multiple times this season. I can easily see it happening here again. For all we know, Sean could easily put up 60 points again, and really anything's possible. I mean, do I think Ashton's going to win? Statistically, probably not, but I'll pick him for this week just because, again, we've seen him be lucky for a large part of the season. And who knows, he might be able to continue it this week after not having really luck on his side the past couple of weeks. And to close off Bourbon Bowl, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the final and biggest match of the season. Like we said, it's the championship match between both of these guys with me on the podcast. I'm going to be the sole person picking the game. Obviously, Peyton's picking himself. Jacob's picking himself. This has been a really hard decision. Both the teams are really good, and I'm rooting for both of them. Like, no matter who wins, I'll be happy because, both these guys really deserve to be in here. Peyton obviously is looking for back-to-back titles. Jacob's looking for a complete turnaround from last place to first place. Like I said, it comes down to really Jacob's consistency and Peyton's ability to boom on a given week. I've thought about it, taking the time for a lot of consideration, but I think for this match, I'm going to go with Jacob. But Peyton could easily win this too. It just really depends on how healthy his guys are. But I think just taking the consistency in this week and how the season's gone all season, I know what Jonathan Taylor is capable of. I know what Joe Mixon's capable of. I know what Deebo Samuel's capable of. I think he'll have just enough to edge Peyton. But obviously, both of you guys, I wish y'all the best of luck. And I'm rooting for both of y'all. And may the best team win. So with that, that'll be the end of our episode. To all of y'all in the championship match of your own respective leagues, we all wish you guys the best of luck, and may you guys win whatever prize it might be, whether it's money, whether it's a signed helmet, whatever it may be. Good luck. May your team remain healthy as best as it can, especially because the last few weeks have been pretty crazy in the NFL. With that, we will conclude this episode of the All Love, All Hate Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Chris Langley, and joined alongside me as always are Jacob Reeder and Peyton Hedrick. Good luck to both of you guys. May the best team win, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.